For some families, dealing with the heartbreaking realities of addiction is the last thing that they ever expected, especially when they've been rooted in the church. Well, today, to talk to us about that very thing is my dear friend, Jonathan Pierce. He's going to tell you about his struggles, about how he got there, but especially about his way out. You don't want to miss this. Stay tuned. Hello, friends. This is Brenda Crouch, and I want to welcome you to Inside Voice. For the next 30 minutes, we'll share secrets, stories, and insights about what drives your everyday decisions. This is your safe place to unfold the mysteries that speak to path and purpose. They are simple yet profound. So take a seat at the table and welcome to Inside Voice. It is my joy and my privilege to introduce you to a very special and dear friend of mine, Jonathan Pierce. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
You've actually been here in our home several times in the past, and you're here today for a different purpose. We're going to talk about your story. It's a powerful story, and I just appreciate that you're here and that you want to take all that God has done in your life and pay it forward to somebody else. So let's go back into, first of all, your childhood, your family.
Sure.
You come from an amazing long line of ministers and some very dear friends of ours, Dr. Jimmy and Becky Pierce, and you are their youngest son.
Yes.
And they are well known for their gospel music throughout the years. Songwriters, and just really they have really left a legacy in the genre of Christian music. And you are yourself a very gifted and anointed musician. So tell us what it was like growing up in this iconic family.
It was. I had a great childhood, to tell you the truth. We had some really exciting times growing up. We got to see this country. Inside and out. I mean, they took us all over the place, ministering and vacationing during those times. And it was just a really great experience growing up, things that I know that others probably won't ever get to see. So I'm very privileged to have had that experience and opportunity growing up.
Yeah.
My parents always did their best for us. They are just the real deal. Both of my parents really are. When it comes to the ministry and when it comes to the Lord and their relationship. And, they really taught us those things when we were growing up. They taught us more and more about the Lord and about how to live for the Lord and really kept us safe in those environments and things like that. So,
they're amazing people.
Yeah, they're great.
And a little background story on your mama. When I met her, it was when I had COVID and I was very, very ill and nearly died. And it was your mom that stepped in, and a village of people that God surrounded me with. But I was bonded to her instantly. She became a sister and a dear friend, helping me with my own recovery from that terrible illness.
Yeah.
But, since then we've maintained such a wonderful friendship. That was a few years ago. And I just have so much respect for both your parents and the legacy they've handed to musically and spiritually to both you and your brother Aaron. The things that you both have done musically have been incredible. You're a saxophone player.
I am. Yeah.
And
been playing for a long time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But more to, I guess, the point of what God has brought you through, and some of the journey for you hasn't always been the glamorous side of what it's like to be involved in a high-profile family, in ministry, and all the good things that come from that. There was really, the enemy had a plan of assault over you even as a child. And I've often said that, he will see the anointing on a child and he wants to destroy what God has actually put on that child for purpose.
Absolutely.
But it's the grace of God and his love and mercy that still brings us there. And that's what God has done and is doing in your life. Tell me a little bit about some of the traumatic things that, or let's talk first about where you ended up in ultimately, and where you found yourself in this juxtaposition of, you had to have said, how did I end up here?
Right. Well, I mean, if we're talking at a young age where it really started, I went through some what I didn't even know was really abusive. I had a really young experience. I was 4 years old, I believe, 4 or 5 years old, where I was sexually abused by someone that was close to us from the church, actually. My family didn't know anything about it. I didn't even express it to them for years. I don't think I told them about it until I was like 12 years old. And so I dealt with some really deep issues with, you know, with sexual, identifying with things like that, as far as what was right and what was wrong. To me, there was nothing wrong with it. It wasn't anything brutal. And so I think that's why I had such a problem with it growing up.
Would that be because you felt, looking back on it now, you could say that you were groomed?
It has to be more like what it was. Yeah.
Which is very common. I mean, with young children, I mean, at that age, you don't know anything, and you rely on those adults that should be safe, protective figures to do that very thing. But instead, sadly, as was in my own case, and you know my own story, some of our protectors become our abusers. And so you can look back on it now and say, okay, that was abuse, the adult in you, but yet then you're carrying the trauma and the wounds from that childhood memory, which really was your formative years. I mean, all the way up to 5 years old, that's your formative years. So, John, how did that affect you in terms of your own identity and the way, you viewed things?
Well, I mean, technically speaking, I became sexually active at 4 or 5 years old through that experience. So because of that, I think
that's sad.
Yeah, it is. I think that I just had so much, weird fantasizing and things going on in my mind growing up as a young boy. Plus, I was hiding it. I didn't know it to be really wrong, but at the same time, there was just something saying that this wasn't right. So I always hid that from my family and others, and I'm lucky that I ended up the way that I did in comparison to so many other stories that I've heard before, because of the situation that took place. I could have gone a totally different way with my lifestyle choices and everything, which which in the long run they really weren't that great in some ways, but it could have been a lot worse. I'll say.
But at one point, you did end up in a lifestyle that didn't really match the way you were raised.
I ended up in nightclubs. I was actually I danced at a male dance club for ladies. It was a ladies club. And I remember literally I was preaching in my youth group about a year and a half prior to that. And then that next year and a half, I was up on a stage, wasted out of my mind on whatever drugs or alcohol or whatever I could get my hands on that night. And I was doing things that I would never have even thought I would do. And that was that moment you're talking about where you're saying, how did I end up here? And,
you had to have had almost an out-of-body experience a little bit, right?
It was, the crazy thing about that was it was one of those jobs where, in those experiences where if it wasn't for the substances and things, I don't know how I would have even done it. And looking at those kinds of, that mindset is just an awful mindset.
So that's really what led you then into abusing substances.
Abuse. Yeah, that year that I got into the club scene, I had done just about every drug you can name off the list. Whereas the year before, I didn't even know what they were. I mean, when I was introduced to each one of them, all I was doing was asking, what's this one going to do to me? I didn't have any education on it or anything. And so it was really just, like you said, one of those tricks that the devil he got a hold of me.
And I would imagine you had a certain level of naivety.
Big time.
Because you were raised
in the church. And Mom and Dad didn't do that stuff.
No.
We didn't do that stuff at home. And so I never saw it.
It's interesting, and I really want to pinpoint or bring this out, because there's so much talk about hypocrisy in the church, and people would want to point at situations like this. And what is not understood is that there was trauma behind it.
Yeah.
And I've seen it 100 times where somebody was involved in ministry, and the next thing they know, their life is fallen apart, and they're doing things that they never expected they would ever do.
Yeah.
It happened to me at one point in my life. And I just remember, almost, like I said, being the third person watching myself and going, what is going on here? How did I end up here? And there's a heartbreak, but at the same time, there's a desperate cry for authenticity. So I would love for you to tell us where that led you before we end this particular segment. Just where did that lead you? What did it look like once those drugs got a hold of you, and that lifestyle and that lie was now the thing driving you?
It was frightening, really, at times, because there were so many deep, they say that bottomless pit that we fall into in that lifestyle. There were so many moments where, I was leaning so much on the drugs and the alcohol and the substances and the people and the lifestyle and all of that when it wasn't there, I didn't know where to turn. And it was such an empty feeling. And I had grown up in church, but I had never really had my own personal experience, except more emotional experiences and maybe that solid choice when you were a kid to follow the Lord. So I didn't have a real foundation. I didn't pay attention in church much. I had a really bad learning disability. I was so hyper. And so I was just kind of part of church growing up. And, when I didn't have those things, when there was those dark moments, it was like, well, now what? It was such a pit of despair. It was unbelievable.
It's hard to face the emptiness and the pain when you're not equipped and you don't have someone there to help guide you through it.
Yeah.
And the relationship with Christ really is something that we don't understand when it's a cerebral thing.
Yeah.
I often said in the past, when I really met him, it wasn't my grandmama's Jesus or my mama's Jesus. He was mine.
Yeah.
So
I have that experience
exactly. Now. Man, do I relate to that. Tell me a little bit, though, about the struggle, because I know you tried so hard in and out of treatment centers, and just, you were a good guy. Why was it so difficult? And help people understand the nature and the power of addiction, and why our systems really play into that lifestyle.
I think the biggest issues that I saw myself dealing with were, the emotions and the feelings that you have because you start a substance regime or routine in your life. You get so physically addicted and you don't even realize it, but it literally comes on just like that. There were times in my life.
What kind of substances are we talking about?
I had lost it all to heroin at one point. I was in Florida and I had lost everything. I lost my house, my car. I lost everything just within a matter of months to a heroin addiction that was just awful. I mean, it got to where I couldn't even pay the electricity and the water bill in the house. It was, then I got into an experience with cocaine, and I got to where that one just wouldn't go away. And then methamphetamine, I got hooked on methamphetamine, and it went rampant in my life on and off for years. And then alcohol was awful with me because I played music for a living in bars and clubs. And so I was constantly drinking on my job and things like that. And
that had to be difficult.
It was.
To try to make a living with that skill set.
And then trying to quit the substances on top of staying in and doing your job.
That are all around you.
Yeah, it was just a never-ending cycle. So the heartbreak of it all was when I finally realized I had to quit. And that was more heartbreaking than so much of the heartbreak that I experienced on the drugs. And all that,
why do you think that is?
My emotions and my whole life were always tied up into my dreams and stuff with music. And so knowing that I needed to take a break from that whole life and that environment was just, it was the most heartbreaking moment of my life at the time. But I had to. And so
Which, if you think about it, I mean, that music was even linked to your family and
Yeah,
your
it was.
childhood, and
Which and that life with my family at that point now with the drugs, I didn't even remember that
yeah,
those experiences with my family
wow,
anymore. It was like, and because I was sober and stuff doing that with them.
hmm
But,
sure,
at this point now I'm on drugs
yeah,
and alcohol and all of that. So it was a totally different experience. It got to where
mm,
I couldn't even perform. I was going to
mm,
churches on Sundays and playing in the praise and worship bands on
wow,
drugs, just, and that was the only
wow,
way I could make it through
yeah.
a
So it's
Sunday
like living
service.
life in the shadows.
Yeah, it was awful.
Yeah. So, what was it then that really brought you? Because I know you had some really low times in your life,
Mm,
and people can get so frustrated, and people that are outside looking in, they
yeah,
don't understand, and they get frustrated, and they can be shaming and almost add to the brokenness.
yeah.
And what was it that you had to do to finally what awakened you?
Someone told me a long time ago when I was making all these excuses. I had just gone into treatment. And he said, "Why do you keep coming to treatment?" And I said, "You
Mm,
know what? I don't know." And he said, "You know what? I don't think you've lost enough. Maybe you haven't lost enough." And I had lost, I don't know how many
right.
times up to that point. I was like, how could I have not lost enough? But it clicked and it made perfect sense.
Mm,
And I think at one point or another, you have to realize and you have to count the cost and realize how much you're losing in this.
yeah.
And that's what happened with me. I got to a point, I was at a homeless shelter when I finally surrendered totally to the Lord and threw my hands up, like they say, just throw your hands up and cry out to
Yeah.
God. And I finally just did that. And I always thought that was ridiculous.
Yeah.
But I did it. And I don't know what happened, but I felt very free by
Yeah.
doing that. And from that point on, the Lord started bringing more of the word into my life. And that's when my life started to change. But I had to realize how much I was losing.
Do you
How
think
much?
there's a surrender of control
Oh yeah,
and a
absolutely.
surrender of pride?
Yeah, absolutely. I
You
mean,
know,
that was one of the big things. Having the friends I had and all that,
yeah,
I didn't want them to know that I was
of
messed up,
course.
So there
Yeah.
was a lot of
It's a double
prideful.
life
Yeah.
in one sense.
Hmm.
But the Lord is near to the brokenhearted, and
Hmm.
it's the contrite heart that He loves. And I think people misunderstand that. They think that God is this mean, uh, you know, figure that
Right.
is just waiting to strike us with His
Giving you the
wrath.
rules and all that.
But what we don't understand is that our tears and our brokenness are the gateway
Hmm.
to actually the truth and to
Right.
meeting Him. And that's what was happening in your
Hmm.
case. And so then let's fast forward a little bit because I
Sure.
don't want to run out of time and I want to talk about
Yeah.
where God has brought you today.
Sure.
Let's talk about the authenticity, the genuine work, the courage that it has taken.
Hmm.
Tell us about that.
Yeah. I started going. I finally went into treatment in 2007, and then on and off throughout the years, it's been very difficult for me to let go, of the music, let go of the
Yeah.
drugs, let go of these
Because I know at
relationships,
one
the
point
friends.
you had to sell your saxophone
Oh,
and
I've sold all my instruments at
heartbreaking.
times,
Yeah.
stuff that is irreplaceable.
Yeah.
I'll never have any, ever again. And so, you know, and then I had a family, my son and my wife,
Yeah.
I experienced a loss there and a
Mm.
divorce there. And it was just, I just got to that point where, I really needed help and I would go in and get the help and then I would go back out and the heartbreak was still something I was dealing with or the
Yeah.
disappointment and the missed marks and things. And so, you
How did
know,
it what did it look like to make the choice to choose Jesus and to say I want life enough
yeah,
and I'm going to love Jonathan enough to choose
that's
Jesus?
actually exactly what it was because all the other choices I had made weren't cutting it.
Mhm.
I mean, and I had always heard and seen, I've been around some of the best ministers on earth,
Yeah.
you know,
Exactly.
and they had
You've heard it all.
literally,
You've been there, done
yeah,
that, bought the
and it
t-shirt.
finally just all clicked one
Yeah.
time. That one time when I told the Lord, okay, I'm just going to give it all to you, whatever that is,
Mhm.
and I'm going to start listening to the
Yeah.
Bible. I'm going to start reading the Bible. I'm going to start
Yeah.
this foundational thing that I've never really had.
Yes.
And so that's really where
Mm.
the
Yeah.
change happen.
And I
Reading the
know
word.
that there were a lot of loved ones praying for you, and God is so faithful.
Yeah.
You know, we're the ones that are so afraid of the journey, Jonathan, but Jesus is not afraid. And we know that he
Yeah.
promises that he will leave the 99 sheep of the flock of
Right.
sheep to run after that one that
Mhm.
has run astray. And when I look at you, my friend, what I see is just the love and the mercy of God for
Yeah.
you and how much he loves us all. And it's so inspiring because he will leave all of the others and he's omnipresent and
Yeah.
omnipotent, but it just gives the picture of the good shepherd
Mhm.
that he doesn't reject us. He understands our brokenness, and his call to you really was to the call of getting real.
Right. Yeah.
And where you hunger after him because you realize that substance is not feeding you
Exactly.
what you needed. That is such a deceptive thing. And we talked earlier about how the enemy comes to kill, steal, and destroy. So you ended up, we've only got a couple minutes left, but you ended up in a treatment center here in East Texas. And it has been life-changing. You've actually been able to work with them.
Yeah.
And tell us a little bit about how God is now working through you
Sure.
as a minister.
Yeah, it's crazy because I guess with all of my experience throughout the years going in and getting
Yeah.
treatment and the
You get it.
education and things that I have,
Yeah.
they had a need at the time while I was in there. And one of the best ways to get your recovery is through service,
Yes.
you know, and really just being a servant period is wonderful. And so that's really how I got my recovery this time, was to get in and really start helping these
Yeah.
guys that needed, you know, help like I did.
Yeah.
I ended up becoming the program director there, and then the facility director there, over all the the farm that we call it,
Yeah.
Isaiah 58 Farms. And
Amazing.
yeah, seeing
And you
families
have a
come
new
back together was great.
saxophone.
I did. I
You're
got a
playing
brand new
music
horn.
again?
I am. I'm playing again.
Oh, I wish we could have you play right
I
here.
know.
You're one of the best saxophone players probably on the face of the earth.
Thank you. I
Honestly,
appreciate it.
you're amazing.
Thank you.
And so restoration, layer by layer, God is rebuilding your life and making it really better than it even ever was because it's real, it's authentic. And are you experiencing something new even with your son?
I am. My son came back into my life,
So awesome.
which I know is just a miracle of God. And you know, he forgave me for all the years, and he's just wonderful. You know, the experience I'm having with him is not what I thought was going to. I thought it was going to be one of those, you know, movie things where the son's just yelling at you, and
God
it wasn't.
is so good.
You know, he just forgave me, and now we talk, and
amazing.
I'm in his life now, and God's really helping.
And you can look at him with the wisdom and the eyes of a dad who was once the son.
Yeah.
And I just want you real quickly in the next minute to look into that camera because you are a minister, Jonathan, and encourage someone. There's a young man that I believe is watching today, and he too experienced that same kind of abuse as a child.
Sure.
His life has been a mess. Would you speak to him for a minute?
Sure. I want you to know that you're not alone. There are plenty of people out here that have experienced the same things, very similar things. I know the Lord, if he can change me and he can change my mind and he can get into the cracks and crevices of my life, then I know he can do that for you. Don't wait, and don't stay alone. Don't try to do this by yourself. Reach out. There's plenty of people that want to help and will help. And just give it a chance. Give yourself a chance, and just see what God can actually do, because he can do a lot, and he will.
Amen.
But you got to give him that, you know, you got to give him that chance.
Amen. A lot of people think they have no value anymore.
No,
but they do.
They absolutely
do. Thank you so much, my friend,
Thank
for
you.
being here. Appreciate you.
Yeah.
And friends, thank you for joining us. I know that Jonathan's story has been a very special one for you to hear. And I hope you'll come again next time. I'm Brenda Crouch. Thanks for joining us at the table. I hope this video has inspired you to walk closer with God. And if you've been encouraged, leave us a comment below. Here's another video that can speak to your path and purpose, and check out this playlist. Be sure to like, subscribe, and share this video with your friends, and we'll see you next time on Inside Voice.